Today we're trying out a new video format. This video is going to accompany the video that we're releasing on the amplifier upgrade for the TSX. We're going to be covering some of the upgrades available for you to purchase because the other one or the other video is just installation. So the other video covers scenarios. We're going to cover scenarios in this video too. So the first one is that you have a TSX, it's either a base or a tech package, and you want to add subs. So if you want to add subs, obviously you want more bass. So we're going to look at option one available for you when you want to upgrade. And that's going to be a factory subwoofer upgrade. So we sell this factory subwoofer upgrade. It is going to work for your 2009, 10, 11, 12, 13 TSX, 14 TSX with the tech package or without the tech package. They're all the same subwoofer. Here's what that factory subwoofer looks like. And with the mounting bracket, this kicker subwoofer that we sell will line up and mount. It comes wired already, so all you have to do is plug it in. If you don't want to use this kicker subwoofer, you can use this right here, the bracket, the screws in the harness to install your own subwoofer. There are some limitations that you need to consider when upgrading the subwoofer. You can find them here in the description. But that's going to be option one. Option one is for the people who don't want to lose any trunk space and you want to use the factory subwoofer location to add a subwoofer with more that can handle more power. So in that case, when you upgrade the subwoofer, you are also going to need to upgrade the amplifier. And in that scenario, you can use almost any amplifier. You can use our plug and play amp. So we have a 5-channel plug and play amp. It'll give more power to your door speakers and more power to your sub. It's going to be between 150 watts to 200 watts to that sub. Or you could use our T harness and line out converter to grab the sub signal from the factory, amplify it with something like this infinity amp. So this is going to do 300 watts at 2 ohms, which is kind of what you want. Has decent enough ratings. And you'll follow the installation video like normal, and you'll just hook it back up to the subwoofer that you install instead of a box or anything like that. So that's scenario one. You want to make sure that you upgrade the amplifier along with the subwoofer. And as precaution, I don't think you should pass more than 300 watts RMS, because if you do, you're going to have more rattle than bass. Like, you're going to get to a point where you're going to sound it and everything, and even if you sound it in top, bottom, inside, it's still going to rattle so much that it's just going to be annoying. So anything over 300 watts, I think you move on to a box. Your second option, if option one, upgrading the factory subwoofer, wasn't enough, is to look at the Rockford Fosgate P300. In this option, you're giving up a little bit of trunk space, but it's really not a lot. And the reason why is because the P300 is only about, what does that say, 12 inches? So a foot deep. So like when you put it in your trunk, you're not losing that much trunk space. It's not that tall and it's not that wide, 20 inches wide. And it fits a 12 in there, and you can see the reviews. People like this thing. It's a good amp sub combo. This has an amplifier here on the side built into the box, and the great thing about this amplifier is that it has just quick disconnects. So if you see my cursor, this is one of the quick disconnects, and this is another quick disconnect. So these settings you set once, and then you're good to go. This works with our T-harness perfectly. So this T-harness will actually plug right into it. Where, hold on, let me make this picture bigger. So this connector right here, where my cursor is, actually plugs right in to the side of the Rockford speaker right here. So you can make your installation as easy as possible, and you just need power and ground and remote. We show you how to do that in the video. The only other thing you need to worry about though is the amp kit. So Rockford recommends 8 gauge, at least for this car, this scenario. So they have a really good amp kit, but it is a little pricey, it's about 120 bucks. Crutchfield's going to have an amp kit for about 80 bucks. And this works out because you don't need RCAs when you pick this up, because this will plug right into the box. So if you're using the P300, I think it's a solid choice. I think if you're worried about trunk space, don't, because it's so shallow. Also, it has a grill on the face of the woofer. So if you're worried about damage, you're putting things in and out, it's gonna take a lot to damage this grill. So that could be, I think scenario number one, option number two is a solid option. You want more bass than what that little 8-inch can do, but you don't want so much bass that it's basically overpowering the rest of your audio system or getting rid of the trunk space that you may need for your day-to-day life. So again, Rockford Fosgate makes great stuff. That's option two for scenario one. For those people who want to shake their car, they want to shake their windows, they want to shake their windshield, they want to shake other people's cars, you want to shake your block, you want people to hear you from a block away. Again, this is only for bass, but it can apply to like just getting loud in general. So if you want to be this person, you're going to need to spend some money on electrical first, just so you have the good foundation to build your system on top of. If you skip these things and just go for big amps, you're not going to make the power that you should, and you're going to eventually damage your equipment. So the first thing you should do if you want to go loud is grab a second battery and a good wiring kit. Now you may be asking yourself, why a battery? Why this zero gauge amp kit? Like, isn't this overkill? Like, what? If you're pushing more than 15, 18, 2000 watts, I want to say that this is going to help the electrical system in your car, and this is why you should do it. Your alternator from the factory is only about 120 amps, so that's not enough amperage to really run a big system and all the electronics in your car. So this battery is going to take a load off the factory system. It's going to act as a buffer between the primary battery and the alternator to provide power to your amps. And when you're installing this battery, you can see this one comes with amp, like this is a marine set, but you can use it in car audio, but this comes with the wire. If you don't use this battery, let's say you use one like this, you're going to want to pick up a solid wiring kit. This is zero gauge wire from Stinger. They make great stuff. This is a great kit. I think it's priced aggressively, honestly, for what it is. And this is a solid choice for installing your battery. So this wire is for battery installation. It's not for your amp yet. Along with this, you might also want to take into consideration doing the big three upgrade. The big three upgrade is upgrading the wire from your battery to your alternator, from your battery to the ground or the body of the car, and from your fuse box to your battery. And you're going to upgrade all of them with thicker wire. And the reason for that is so that current can easily travel between the battery and the alternator when there's more current being demanded. So I want to say that battery and the additional wiring, big three upgrade, gets you to like 3K status, so you can run, like either a base 3K or something similar. If you want to push past that, you're going to need to do a couple other things. One of them is going to be an ELD bypass. So your Acura has a electric load detection system, and basically it just puts the output of the alternator at different levels. So when the ELD detects that there's a low output condition, it's only going to request 12 volts from the alternator. When the ELD determines that there's a high output condition, it's going to require 14 volts from the alternator. You can kind of bypass or trick the ELD to always output 14 volts, but that's something you're going to have to look into yourself. Also, if you're going to do a secondary battery, a good practice is to use a battery isolator. Um, it just stops your primary battery from being discharged by your secondary battery. So if you're playing music over a long period of time, you're not going to drain both batteries, you'll only drain one. It also helps with charging the batteries. The last thing you want to consider, depending how high of amperage or how much power you want to do, is going to be a high output alternator. There are different companies that make different ones. What you need to know about your high output alternator is that it's either going to be 200 or 320, and this pulley is going to be smaller. So your normal OEM belt isn't going to fit. It's going to have a lot of slack. So you're going to need to find a smaller belt. So keep that in mind. Those are, if you're pushing the envelope with bass. If you are just wanting to really shake your car and the car next to you, I would stop at the battery and the zero gauge amp kit in the big three. That should be enough for you to get to 3K, and 3K should shake enough of what you want. Now, if you're going to push more than 3000 watts, you're going to have to look at stuff that is independently packaged. So there's no base packages that are going to put out that much bass, but like you can see this Sundown Neo is a 50 this is an 18-inch sub, but it's putting out 3000 watts, or it can handle 3000 watts. And then you have your Taramp Space 5K. So I don't know why, but usually when I see someone with a big system in an Acura, it's always Taramps. I don't know what it is. It just, when they go that loud, it's always Taramps. But again, if you want to push north of 3000 watts, that's what it's going to require. You're going to need to spec out your own system and really spend some money. Now, if you're just getting into the audio game, if you want to call it that, and you want something that you can kind of just grab off the shelf and get to work, After doing the zero gauge and that battery as a buffer, again, it doesn't need to be a huge battery. You can get away with like an $80 or a $60 battery. You just need that buffer. Back in the day, people used to use capacitors, but now it's not really common practice anymore. It doesn't do what it's supposed to do. You can look at super capacitors, but they're the same as a battery almost, so it's just better to get a battery. So back to what I was saying, if you want something off the shelf that you can get some power out of, I think DS18 is going to have your best option. This is about $1,000, but it's coming with the amp kit. This is the amp kit for the amp. Remember, the other amp kit that you're buying is to install the battery. So this is to install the amp, and this is going to come with everything that you need to install the amp. You're just going to want to pick up the T-harness thing from us to make your installation easier. Tap that rear sub. You don't have to do any wire tapping. You can just unplug and plug stuff in. But back to that base package. So here, it's going to come with everything. You get two 12s, a nice big box. This will fit in your trunk, but it's going to be really tight. And then you're going to need to tuck this amp someplace. But again, if you want big bass, you're willing to sacrifice your trunk space. This is probably going to be your best one. This is going to get to right about 2,000 watts. Um, and then if you aren't comfortable spending that much money or you don't like DS18, Scar has some options as well. It's about half the price, but this is about half the power, about 1,200 watts. And then CT sounds very similar. They have the same setup. They're 1,300 watts. There are a ton of other bass packages. So here I'll show you bass package. I put 3,000 watts before, but there are a ton of other bass packages you can find on Amazon, wherever. But like if you want to push a lot of bass, you want to get super loud, you're gonna want to get separate components. But again, if you're just getting into this and you want something that you know works together, you don't have to give it much thought. These bass packages are great. I really like this DS18 one. I think it's really gonna be a great solution for people. But all right, guys, that's gonna cover these three options for scenario one where you just want to add bass. The next scenario we're gonna look at is going to be when you want to just go loud. You want to set up either a speaker box or a chuchero. I'm going to go over some of the options you have there. For scenario two, if you want to install a speaker box or a chuchero, you're going to need a couple things. The first thing you're going to need is the T-harness that we sell so you can get a signal. And then you're going to want to pick up either our line out converter. So this comes with this line out converter or LC2I or something similar. And possibly a crossover. So the XM3 does a good job. You can send the signal in. It's linked together. So you get another out and then another out. And then it has adjustments so you can set the frequencies. So here's where your tweeters would go. Here's where your woofers would go. Here's where your sub would go if you want to do like a system with a chuchero and subs. But if you're just doing a chuchero or just a speaker box, you're going to want to find one that's already made if this is your first time. So this gold standard for me would be PRV. This is what people love. What I don't like about the PRV box is that it only has one set of terminals. So I'll try to show you here. You see in the back, it only has one set of terminals, and that's what's going to power the entire thing. You don't have much control of what is going to get what. So like I like to run this on a dedicated channel and these on dedicated channels, so you don't have full control. They just want you to put a mono block on it. That's full range. It's not the end of the world. The PRV obviously knows what they're doing, but I like to make sure that I protect my stuff and I don't feel 100% confident with this. I know they probably have a base blocker on this, but still not my choice. But PRV, these chucheros are really nice. They're a little bit pricey, and sometimes they're out of stock, but this is going to be the gold standard what everyone wants. What we used to end up doing is we would convert these to the speak-on conversion. We would convert these to the speak-on cable, and here's kind of how you set it up. So if you're not sure, if yours came apart, etc., this is a two-wire. It does have four terminals, so positive and negative for your woofer, positive and negative for your tweeter. And the colors on the wires are always going to be different, but you just need to know how to assemble the plug. So we would make the conversion for people so that they could use a quick disconnect instead of that little terminal that I showed you earlier. Now, if that PRV Chuchero is too much or you're thinking about other options, I really like what DS18 offers. So DS18 has this nice Chuchero. This is a 10-inch, comes with two tweeters and two 10-inch woofers. I want to say it's like 400 watts RMS, 600 watts RMS. So it's going to be plenty loud. And then this already has the actual connector here on the back. I don't like the location of it because like normally you put these in the seat and then this is going to rub against the back of the seat and then it's going to eventually cause that connector to break down. But it's an option. This is a really good option. I think these were the ones we sold the most. when I was like actively selling chucheros. Now, if you need something cheaper, Audio Pipe does have one. It comes with the speak-on cable, and you can see here it has the 4 wires I'm talking about. And then here's what it actually looks like. So again, cheaper option. This is an 8-inch, but still off the shelf. You can get it right away. If you want to make your own, you can. This will take two 12-inch woofers. There's like local stores near you that'll make a box depending where you're located, or you can get one off Amazon. And this is what they look like, and you fill them in with your woofers, and then you got to wire everything. If this is your first time ever attempting this, I don't recommend buying one of these. Just go DS18. They're proven and they work. And then if you don't want a chuchero, you have speaker boxes. So back in the day, these were actually pretty popular and different manufacturers used to make them. They just looked like subwoofer boxes, but they used to put horns on them. But they weren't meant to play bass. They were meant to play your mids and your highs. So this still exists. This is one of the ones on Amazon. It has pretty good reviews. So this has 4 6.5s and 2 and 4 tweeters. And you can put them really anywhere. I wonder if they have a picture where it shows. Oh, they say it has a crossover network. Okay, now they're loading. So this is my idea for this is where you put it on the rear deck and it's just going to be instantly louder. Some people put them in the seat. I guess if you have a hatchback, that's a nice little setup. These have different terminals, so it's not the speak on cable, but it still works. And those are going to be like your main chucheros or speaker boxes. Again, it's plenty of options, but those are going to be your main ones. Now, along with the chuchero, you're going to need a amp. I don't suggest you use an amp from like PRV or Taramps or similar designs because the way they're designed, it's confusing for your first timer. So look, you have 6 terminals, but you have 8 wires. So you're like, wait, what goes where? They share negatives, or your negative becomes your positive. So like, look, channel 1 here, it's gonna be hard to show you, but it says channel 1. This far left is positive, and the middle is negative. Then channel 2, the negative for channel 1 is positive for channel 2, and etc. I know these designs exist so you can make more power. There's like, this is above my head probably with what I can understand when it comes to amp design, but I know this is super confusing for the average user. So I recommend if you're going to go with PRV, Timpano, or one of their amps, grab one of these. So this is still a 1200.4, but this has the actual 4 terminals on the side. So you see channel 1 has its own negative and positive, channel 2 has its own negative and positive, 3 and 4 same thing, and you can bridge them as well, and then you see where your power and your ground goes. So this is an easier design for DIYers to understand and to work with. And then there's other options. So like I really like the DS18 amp. This one's nice. It sets 3,000 watts, but really puts out like 150 per channel. And this has screw down terminals with you get a positive and negative, positive and negative. So they're easy to follow, easy to understand. And you also get a set of like good crossovers here that are pretty easy to understand. I think this one had a decent set of crossovers too. Yeah, so you get your crossover right there, high pass, low pass filter. Those are going to be your options for your amps. There are other amps you can use. Those are just the ones I found. I talked to you earlier about the crossover. So along with the crossover, sometimes people like to also use an EQ. Clarion's the big brand for the EQ and the crossover. So that's kind of like what I see the most. Is like when you see someone who has a Chuchero and their system's loud, they always have a Clarion EQ or a Clarion crossover. But that's going to cover the stuff that you should pick up if you have or if you plan to install a Chuchero. Something I didn't cover is your amp kit. I covered it earlier in the video, so you just want a good 4 gauge amp kit. If you really want to push and be super, super loud, you're going to want to go back in the video and do those electrical upgrades as well. Because once you start pushing, let's say 1500 watts or more, you're going to want to make some electrical upgrades. This 1200 watt amplifier, where is it? Right here. These can go on stock electrical. Um, and they're going to be plenty loud. These will be loud enough where people are going to hear you down the street. Your chair is going to be super loud when you put it on top of your car. Like, it's going to be enough. But there's people who want to push 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 watts. At that point, you're going to need multiple chucheros, or if not, like seriously powerful ones. Like, you're going to need something that has 412s and 8 tweeters or something like that, or maybe a wall like the speaker walls that you see. So, just I'm giving you the entry to it. There's a ton of options, but if you're like stuck, you've seen someone with a Chuchero, you want to get one for yourself. This right here, DS18, make sure it comes with the cable, it may not. And then the DS18 amp to match it. Where is it? Where is it? There we go. The DS18 amp to match it. and then our T harness with a line out converter. Follow the video and you'll be all set, man. That'll be plenty of loud. It'll turn plenty of heads. It's not going to be anything super crazy, but it will get you started. So for scenario three, it's you're going to want to upgrade your system. You're going to want a little bit more flexibility in your system, maybe a little bit more bass, maybe you want to tune your doors a certain way, etc. So your 5-channel plug and play amp that we sell, this is sells pretty often, but it doesn't get a ton of feedback. So if you have it, I'd like to get your feedback. You see, it has one Trustpilot review and one review from us, and it's about someone complaining that it doesn't have the bass knob, but they should have gotten a bass knob. Just whatever happened to it, happened to it. It's the same amplifier that is used on the TL, so I'll show you some of the TL reviews because it's going to be the same amplifier. So here, um, usually everyone says pretty decent stuff about it, that they like how it installed, that it was really a good upgrade. Again, that's on the TL, but TSX is going to be extremely similar. It's just the connections are different. So if you want to see how to hook it up, make sure you watch the installation video. We're going to have a dedicated video for this, reviewing this amp. But for your buying guide, if you're thinking about picking it up, you're going to make your selections on what year you have, and then what model. So this is a TSX, and then you have the factory radio, and then you have the factory subwoofer. Or if you have our kicker subwoofer, you're going to go aftermarket subwoofer. If you have an aftermarket radio, you can also buy this amp, but it's going to be very dependent on how you installed your aftermarket radio and how this amp is going to work. So factory radio, aftermarket subwoofer, or factory subwoofer. This is probably going to be your most common scenario right here. A 2010 or 2011 TSX factory radio, factory subwoofer. And this is a great upgrade for someone who just wants a little bit more. So this amplifier is rated for 80 by 4 for your speakers and 200 by 1 for the subwoofer. Now, that like sounds super great because your factory speakers are only 15 watts from the factory, but in real world translation is you're going a little louder on your door speakers, and you'll definitely hear it in some songs. You'll definitely hear it when you listen to AM FM. With Bluetooth, it's tuned down a little bit, so you just really feel more of the bass than the speakers. But it doesn't require any power wire, any ground wire for you to do any wiring. All you do is unplug the factory amplifier, plug this in, and start enjoying. And it's going to work with the factory speakers or aftermarket speakers. Now, this is specifically for a bass, so that's something that you have to keep in mind. This amplifier only works on the bass. If you want to use this on your tech package, it's not available because the tech package needs to leave the factory amplifier in place, so we can't grab all the power to power this one. And then it needs a converter before it gets to be amplified. So in that scenario, you can grab the high power plug and play amplifier. And this, you can choose a 2011, 12, 13 TSX. And it's going to come with the connections to plug in for the speakers, like the plug and play amplifier, but you will have to run power and ground to the battery. So here's the amp. It's going to be fully tuned, everything wired in, but you will have to run this power wire to the battery and ground this amp. If you watch our video, you'll see where to ground and where to run power. So then these connections will be easy to make. It comes on an amp rack, so you can mount your amp and everything. And so far, we've only sold a few, but people like them, the people who have bought them. It is a powerful amplifier. It's going to do 85 by 4 plus 110 by 2 at 4 ohms, or 140 watts by 4 plus 185 watts times 2 at 2 ohms. So you can run it in a 5-channel configuration or a 6-channel configuration. It's going to be up to you what you decide when we reach out about the amplifier. It is a little, I want to say, on the higher end, but for what you're getting and everything that comes along, I think you're saving a ton of money compared if you're going to a shop to do this. And if you're doing this on your own, you're going to need to know a lot to really configure this thing the right way. So I think you're getting your money's worth here, but it's definitely up to you. If you have a tech package, if you have a bass plug and play amplifier, I think it's a no-brainer if you're looking for a subtle upgrade. So for scenario number 4, right? Yep, scenario number 4, you have a bass. You want to upgrade the amplifier that's powering all the speakers, and you're going to either have the factory radio or an aftermarket radio. I think if you're looking for a good upgrade, solid upgrade, but not like a ton of bass, the Pioneer takes the cake. So this Pioneer amp right here, it's going to do 75 by 4 at 4 ohms. That's underrated. It does more than that. And then it's doing 600 watts RMS at 1 or 2 ohms. And this is a great amp, great choice if you want a simple 5-channel system. In your TSX, you have 5 speakers from the factory. So on your bass, if you just want to amplify those 5 speakers, uh, this works great. Small amp will fit under the seat, will fit in the trunk. I don't. This was one of my best sellers in the shop. I really like this amp. Um, if you don't want to pay this price, you can find it cheaper sometimes on Amazon, or you can get a cheaper amp overall. But along with this amp, you're going to want to pick up the amp bypass so that you can run the RCAs from the amp to the bypass. So here you get the 5 RCAs, and then here are all your speakers. Just remember, I showed you in the other video that your tweeters need to be protected because your tweeters are on separate lines here. So you want to keep that in mind. So you're going to run those tweeters to the same output here on the front channels, but you do want to protect the speakers in the front. So you can see channel A and channel B, your front speaker. So your front left speaker is going to go right here and your tweeter is going to go right there. So you're going to put 2 wires. You put 4 wires into 2 holes ultimately. Here's your sub and your power. Is really wonderful amp, very powerful. And I've heard good things about this amp. Has good reviews too. It's just a cheaper company, cheaper amp. I don't like this style of terminal with the screw down just because it makes it more annoying to install. But hey, I think the Pioneer had, no, the Pioneer has holes, yeah. So yeah, so I don't really like that. But if you need to save the money, you want something good, this should work. It has good ratings, and I've heard good stuff personally from other customers. If that doesn't do it for you, you do have this Diamore Engineering. This dude is a genius, makes great stuff. So this amp is going to be beautiful. Highly recommend his stuff. Highly recommend this amp. Have never used it personally, but I have seen reviews, and I'm telling you, anything this guy puts out. He used to work at Rockford. It's just great dude, man. Great dude. So highly recommend this if you're looking for a 5 channel amp, or Rockford Fosgate still makes great stuff. There's gonna be so many options when it comes to 5 channel amps. So that's going to be your straightforward, easy way. Amp bypass, straight to your 5 channel amp, run power and ground. I showed you how to do that. You're just going to need an amp kit, no line out converter needed, nothing. You're just going to tune to the factory radio. If you're doing an aftermarket radio, you're not going to use this side of the harness. You're just going to run your aftermarket radios, RCAs from the front to the back, and the remote from the front to the back. But five channel amp, solid choice, easy system. If you want to add more speakers, or if you want to do multiple amplifiers, so something that I've heard people say is, hey, I have a bass, but I want to use those rear doors. I want to put speakers in there. So you can pick up a 6 channel amp, and you can use the amp bypass to run a 6 channel amp and run all your woofers, make a really loud car that way. Um, that's possible. I don't have any options for buying stuff there. I would look at DS18. They're gonna have good stuff. I'm trying to think who has 6 channel amps. I think you can get away with 2 4 channel amps also, but it's gonna be up to you. Now I'm gonna move forward and say you're gonna run 2 amps. So remember, scenario 4 is for the bass, but you were running 1 amp. Now you're running 2 amps. So this is option 2. So you're running 2 amps. You're gonna need a dual amp kit. So let me just dual amp kit. There's going to be a ton of them. Crutchfield has one. Let's go with the Rockford Fosgate one. They always have good stuff. Let's see what's here. So you have your main fuse. They don't have fuse distribution though. I don't like that. You want fuse distribution. I think Kicker has a power wire set. Yeah, here we go. So Kicker has fuse distribution. So you get what is this, 4 gauge? Yeah, you get 4 gauge, and then 8 gauge, and then your 2 fuses, and then a few powered fuse distribution. So I like this because of fuse distribution, but I think the Rockford has better wiring and more wiring. But you could see the price difference. But you're going to want to pick up a dual amp kit so that you can install 2 amps. You want to make sure you have fuse power distribution and the appropriate wiring running from the front to the back. So if you're going to go with this system right here, the Kicker and the Audison, you're going to need about 100 amps. So you're going to want to run 0 gauge or something. Yeah, I would say 0 gauge to be prepared. You could get away with really high-end 4 gauge wiring, but these 2 amps are going to be the combination I recommend to get a lot of bass and to get a lot of voice. Now you can change these out. So with the amp bypass, where is it? You'll run 4 to your voice amp and then 1 to your subwoofer, or on the actual CXA on the Audison amp, there's in and then it has out. So you could just run this to your subwoofer amp, and then your subwoofer amp also has in and out. But this is a good option. People love. You can see it's a top seller on Crutchfield. CXA 800.1 small amp gets the power. Makes it could probably make 900 watts or 1,000 watts. If you want more bass, you can go 1200.1 or 600.1 or another company's amp. But that's how you'll set up your 2 amps. So you're gonna get an amp kit that's gonna split it, and then from the amp bypass, you'll run it your RCA's to there. Now, let's say Kicker or freaking Audison's not your thing. JL Audio has options too. So here's a 400.4 amp from them and a 1000.1, and you can run these two amps, the dual amp kit, and call it a day. So you'll have a subwoofer amp, and you'll have an amp for your for your front doors and rear deck, and then your tweeters, you want to protect them with something, so you want to upgrade your front speakers to make it simple, or put bass blockers on your tweeter if you're going to keep the factory speakers. But that's going to really cover scenario 4. There's really nothing much more to it. It's real simple because you can bypass the factory amp. All right, so we're up to scenario 5. Scenario 5 is specific to the tech package. So in the tech package, you have to leave the factory amplifier in place, and it still needs to have power and communication. Otherwise, you're going to lose the ability to control the volume of your aftermarket amplifiers and your factory amplifier if you don't leave it connected. There's a CAN bus communication between the factory amplifier and the factory radio, so the factory amplifier must be connected. So what we do is we grab the output out of the factory amplifier. So this plugs into the output side of the amplifier, and then it gives you a set of wires to connect. These set of wires you're going to cut. So depending on what you want to amplify, you're going to cut that set of wires and send them to your amplifier or your DSP. So here you have a set of white, a set of grays, a set of greens, a set of purples. Those are going to be your door speakers and your tweeters. This brown is going to be your subwoofer. This orange is going to be your center. You have an extra set of purple and greens, and those are your surround speakers. So you can leave those, you can leave your center and your surround speakers on the factory amplifier, and then send your door speakers and your deck speakers to your line out converter so you can amplify them. So you'll cut the harness, send one side to your DSP or your amps, and then send the other side back from your DSP or your amp with the power to your speakers. So if you found that confusing, we do have a plug and play DSP amplifier. This doesn't have much pictures. It just shows you which amplifier it is. And this is the JBL DSP amp. So it's this amp right here. And it's going to come completely configured. And then all the harnesses are going to be plug and play. You will have to run power to the battery. Depending on how much, depending exactly on what you're trying to do. This amplifier is like super custom, so like once you order it, the tech's gonna reach out to you and try to like ask you what your end goal is. This amplifier isn't super loud. It's really if you want to keep all your speakers and do like an SQ build. So you don't really want a ton of volume. You just want to make sure your sound sounds exactly how you want it to. But again, your tech package is going to be complex, so we're going to try to simplify it for you. You're going to buy this harness. You're going to connect this harness to a line out converter. So you can use an LC8i or a Link 8, and the way it works is, so the way you're going to use this, it's going to go front left speaker, front right speaker. These are going to plug your tweeters. Then you're going to go front, then you're going to go rear left speaker, rear right speaker, so in your doors. Then rear deck speaker, rear right deck speaker, then sub, then center. And then you have all those outputs to send to your amps via RCA converted already. And then this has the technology to, help you match the bass, roll off, etc. Now you can do a Link 8 from WaveTech. It's extremely similar. I like this one a little better because of the clip indicators. It also has summing. I feel like it has a couple more features than your audio control piece, but they're like priced super similar, so it's up to you. I'd rather you get the WaveTech than the audio control, but obviously it's up to you with what you're familiar with. Those are your line out converters, so that's not going to fix the signal in any other way. It's just going to turn the signal to a usable signal for an amplifier. This, I think it's going to be what most people use because of the cost. Like, it's not too expensive. Like, yeah, it's 260, but in your ELS, anything that you integrate is going to be expensive. So you just kind of have to suck it up. So then, if you're going to go next level or you really want to achieve a certain sound goal, you're going to want to pick up a DSP. And that's where I really like the BitNove. The only thing though with the BitNove is that it only has 6 input channels. So you're going to have to leave some output not connected to anything. What I mean by that is on the audio control, remember, front left speakers, rear doors. So here you have front door speakers, rear deck speakers, sub and center. On your BitNove, it only has 6 inputs. So you're gonna have to go front left speaker, front right speaker, and then rear door speaker, and then sub and center. Rear deck speakers are not gonna get hooked up to anything. They don't have any valuable source information. Like nothing really plays back there except more sound. so it's not a big deal that you're not going to use them. You do want to hook up your front door speakers and your center speaker, because that's like where your warnings and your phone calls and everything comes through. But like those rear deck speakers aren't going to have their own audio source. They're probably just duplicates of the rear door speakers or vice versa. So with your BitNove, you're only going to have 6 input channels. You're not going to end up hooking the outputs from the rear deck speakers to anything. You'll just cut the wire and then feed it audio out of here, because this has 9 output channels, so you can run, your 3 amps or your 2 amps, however you want to do it. And the DSP in this thing is super powerful. The software inside Audison is great. If you're not familiar with this product, I really like it. But let's say you want an amplifier and a DSP built into one, you can look at the APF 8.9 bit. I hate how Audison names their stuff, but this is a solid amp. It's going to make a ton of power, and it's going to have a 6-channel DSP built in, and it'll even give you an output for a sub amp if you want to go with a separate sub amp and just run all your voice off of this. It's bridgeable. This amp is super powerful and is very efficient. I really like the Audison stuff, but here's your power rating. So it's 8 channels at 4 ohms. It's 85 by 8, or at 2 ohms, it's 130 by 8. So you can do a lot with this little guy. It's up to you. If you're not familiar with Audison, don't want to use Audison, Audio Control has a 6-channel car amplifier, so it's going to do 125 by 6, and it also has a 6-channel DSP. So you have plenty of options when it comes to your tech package. You just want to remember, you want to integrate into the factory amplifier. If you try to replace or remove entirely the factory amplifier, you're going to lose volume control, and then you're going to need an amp that has a DRC or ARC. So if you get rid of the factory amplifier in the tech package, you're going to lose the ability to control the volume. So to control the volume on your amplifier, you're going to need this. This is a DRC, or a digital remote control. And basically it just lets you cycle through the volume fader. It lets you cycle through the volume, balance fader, and sub level, and it's just basically your new stereo pretty much, because like, yeah, the source is going to be coming from the factory radio, but your volume control is going to be coming through here, and this is going to be manipulating the amp directly. There's a bunch of options, a bunch of amps that support this. They're all really expensive. So JL, Alpine, other brands are going to have one, but be prepared to spend like 1500 or more. So most people don't go this option. What most people do is they grab this harness, they send it to the line out converter, and then from the line out converter they use the same amps that they would have used for the bass. So like I showed you the 2 amps before, or the 5-channel amp before, then you could just send the output of this line out converter to those amps. And we showed you in the video, we use the 6-channel line out converter, but the same premise is going to stand here. You just want to make sure you get a line out converter or a DSP to integrate into the factory amp. And then when it comes to amplifiers, you can use an amplifier with a built-in DSP, or just general amplifiers to get the job done. And that's going to cover scenario 5. This one's really complex, so if you're a little lost, I recommend watching the installation video first so you can understand how the pieces go, and then you can make a decision on what to buy. If you're just like, bro, just tell me what to buy, what you want is the line out converter. I'm sorry, what you want is the integration harness to a line out converter. So then you can go with just a traditional 4-channel amp like we showed you in the bass, and a traditional mono block like we showed you. So SR 4.500 and a CSA 800.1, and call it a day. You just need this piece before you go to the amps.